Hey guys, Josh here from Brisbane's Fishing with your dosage of fishing goodness. Today, I'm wearing my uncomfortable sports bra again, also known as the chest mount, so we can get some really good angles of this DIY deck light that you're going to help build, in a way, yourself. I don't know. You're going to do it yourself. Let's put it that way. You're going to do it yourself. We're going to do a DIY deck light. So, let's have a quick basic rundown of all the tools that you're going to need. So we'll start this camera up, we'll get it running, and we'll get into it, shall we? All right, so first up, excuse the poor lighting, I've got LED lights, so it's going to be very, very flickery. You're going to need a heat shrink gun or a little butane torch. So we've got one here for compressing your heat shrink down. Next up, we've got a set of Deutz pin crimping tools. We'll get to those in a sec. Wire strippers, side cutters, a soldering iron. Now, these are a little battery soldering iron that Milwaukee do. They're not cheap. I'm a diesel fitter by trade, so it's something I use from time to time. Deutz pin, or 4-pin Deutz plug with pins, connectors, everything like that. And that's where your little tool comes in. This is semi-waterproof, but you will still get corrosion in there. It's just an easier plug setup for us to do today, so that's why we're running with that. Next up, we've got our solder, big roll of it. So for when we're soldering, or if you're American, soldering. I don't know why it's that, but apparently that's what they say in America. I apologize for any of my American viewers. I'm not taking the piss, but
don't take the piss, Boris.
I show you now. It sounds weird when you say soldering. Duct tape for if I forget to put heat shrink on and we're gonna have tape connections up or anything like that. Then you've got your heat shrink. So we've also got thicker gauge heat shrink here, because what we're gonna do is why we actually have the thicker heat shrink is because we're gonna wrap up our twin core. Now this is 3mm twin core. You could probably get away with, 3mm is pretty good for what we're doing. 4mm if you're running it a little bit further. And you just up the gauge depending on how far you're running it. If you're running it like, I don't know, 10 meters or something like that, you probably want more like 4mm or 6mm or something like that. Don't quote me, I'm not an electrician. I know basic electrics. That's about it. We're gonna run 2 sets of twin core, and we're gonna run that twin core through a bit of conduit so it lasts a little bit longer, because we will obviously have our deck light out in the elements, so we don't want our twin core degrading quicker than we need to. Then the bigger part of it, the actual equipment that we're gonna be running is a couple of LED deck lights, LED lights, spotlights, deck lights. They will be deck lights. So we're gonna run an actual couple LED spotlights. Now, you can mount these wherever you wanted to on your boat. They're really simple to mount. They're just twin core that runs to them. Run it through a fuse or a switch panel with a fuse. Doesn't really matter too much. It's ideal if you can run it off a switch, so you're not having to connect and disconnect your wiring. And then of course, we have the pole mounting device. Now, I like to use a paint roller pole, mainly because they're made out of quite a lightweight material, aluminium, for those people that don't know, or once again for my American viewers, aluminum. I don't know why, but that's what they call it, aluminum. Now at the top of that, you can see I've already drilled 2 holes. If you really want to know how to drill holes, I'm sure you can look up another YouTube video on how to drill holes.
Step 3, be careful drilling into a bathroom wall or into any walls that are shared with a bathroom.
But basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna mount each light at a 45-degree angle to one another, so that we've got a little bit more of a broader beam spectrum, better angles to work with. I don't know, we could sit there and say why it's better all day, but basically I've got them at 45-degree angles, and then of course these also will be able to pivot on this pole. So I forgot spanners, but you'll get the general gist of it once I put them on. So let's quickly set them up and let's get into the wiring, okay guys? So for you guys back down here on the camera, we're just going to quickly feed these in. I really wish I did actually bring home some tooling. You guys probably won't really see this, especially if it takes too much time for me to get it done. So we have our lights mounted up. Now, this is just a real dodgy mock-up for the time being, but you can see what I mean by the 45-degree angle. So then from there, you can actually rotate your lights depending on how you want to have them, basically. So we're going to get quite a good beam width out of the 45-degree angle like that. So next step is wiring. So we can get rid of this box at least. And it's raining outside, otherwise I would be doing this outside. Oh man, this sports bra, chest mount, is really awkward. Now, I've got 2 lengths of twin cord here that I'm going to be using. These are cut to 3.5 meters because we have a pole that goes to about 3 meters full extension. So obviously when you contract your pole, you're going to have a little bit of a coil up, if you will. So, you know, you're going to have to allow for the fact that it's going to go up and down and so on and so forth. So 3.5 meters gives us enough distance basically to run the connection into the boat, where we already have a Deutz pin or a 4-pin. Where we already have a 4-pin Deutz connector already mounted. Now, if you're running batteries or if you're running some other style, feel free to use any other sort of crimp. You can use those tiny little like regular electrical crimps where you get a pair of crimping pliers and you crimp them together and stuff like that. You could just run it, like if I was going to have it as a permanent light setup, I would just straight solder it all up so you've got minimal connections, because on a boat, in a marine application, you're going to have a high corrosive environment where salt is just always going to penetrate in. It's going to create, it's like black death, I would probably call it, where you copper wire, or even you copper tin wire, because it's a marine application, I'll get into that in a hot minute. It does actually start to corrode and degrade over time. Now, you can prevent that obviously by having as little connections as possible, but as soon as moisture or salt water gets into that mix, it'll start to corrode the whole length of wire. So that's why we solder and we heat shrink and we try and make sure that no moisture can get to it. So what we're going to do is we are going to strip down the wire. So now these little wire strippers are actually really good because you've actually got a built-in gauge. So if you only want a little bit off, it does exactly how you want it. Do the same on this side. Next step, turn our soldering iron on. Now this is really great because you can actually angle this soldering iron like so. It stands up the whole time, like that for you guys up there. You don't actually have to use 2 people. You can actually use 1 person. So all we're going to do, guys, is we're going to go red to red, black to black. Now this here is only, I'd say 2 mil, 1 mil. It's not going to matter too much. It's not really going to affect things. We'll cut our heat shrink beforehand, because you always want to make sure you put your heat shrink on before you solder the wire, because you're not going to get heat shrink on otherwise. And you'll end up with a real pain in the backside. So we'll get them all pre-cut, ready to go. Now also make sure you've got enough wire bare back so that when you slip your heat shrink on, you can run it far enough back up the wire so that you're not going to get any radiation through that wire, which is going to bring your heat shrink down straight off the bat, because you're not going to be able to pull it over the connection that you make later on. Now we are going to get a little bit of solder. Get that all ready. A little hot tip for you guys at home. Makes it so much easier if you pre-solder your connections. If you pre-solder your connections, you can have them all ready to go. These ones on the light side are already pre-soldered. So let me just get this other one done. We'll let them cool a little bit. This is the point where you want to slip your conduit on, like so. Pull that back as far as you can, because obviously you're going to get a little bit of heat transfer, which is what I wanted to say earlier, heat transfer. If you get a bit of heat transfer and it goes too far back up the 3 mil core, you'll actually find that it'll half shrink it. You won't be able to pull it back over your connection, which is not what we want today. Remember guys, we're going black to black, red to red. There we go. Let it solidify. Give it a good tug test. Now that is nice and solid. That's not going to affect us in any way. Right, now the other side. Same thing again. Tug test. There we go. Well, that's one side done. Yeah, buddy, that one's hot. See, nice strong connection. I'm actually pulling quite a fair bit on that. It's a little bit hard for you guys to see up there, so we're just going to go off this camera for now. Oh. All right, so now we can turn our soldering iron off. Now remember, it will take a little bit of time for heat to go away, so that's just a safety risk, guys. But yeah, if you can get yourself a Milwaukee one, whew, they are mint. And pull your heat shrink up over the connection we've just made. Just be nice and gentle in case there's a little bit of a spike on your soldered connection. If you're worried about it, all you can do is just heat it up, reshape it, it's solder. It's very easy to do. Here we go. I was just going to pull it in. I'll try and get as close as I can for you guys. You don't want to apply heat straight onto it because you'll burn that heat shrink straight up. There you go, that's all covered. This will all be covered in conduit, so we won't even see it, but we'll probably end up duct taping it or electrical taping it anyway, just because I want to hold them together, because they will be stronger together than they will be on their own, and just to sort of help bulk that up. Alright, so the next two, pull them down nice and gently. Make sure they're covering that connection. There's no point in shrinking it all down onto it if you haven't covered your connection properly. Once again, make sure you get around the back side of it as well. Yeah, make sure you go right around it. Get that heat shrink pulled down nice and tight on your connection itself. And there you go, guys. That's all connected. So we'll tidy this up with a little bit of electrical tape. You don't have to. If I had the right size or right gauge heat shrink, I would actually then run heat shrink over that again. All right, so I did manage to find a little bit of smaller gauge heat shrink, so we're going to quickly whack that on. A couple pre-cut pieces here, and we'll basically just cover up that section there. Let's get it done. Just going to do the same thing again. That one done. Alright, we're done. We are done. That's those two all finished, knocked up, and sweet. So now what we're going to do is we're going to jam these up our conduit. Before we're going to do that though, we're going to try and cut a couple of lengths of heat shrink, because what we're going to do is we're going to make it look all nice and neat. Feed that the full length of our 2K. Definitely pays to have everything nice and straight, well laid out, just so it's a little bit easier to get it to go up the length of the harness. Took way too long, let's put it that way, but we're here, guys. We got it done. We got the conduit on and done. So all I'm doing at the end here is we're just going to put a little bit of heat shrink over the end of it, just to neaten it up, make it look all nice and sealed up. You don't have to, again, guys, go to this extent. You could just put a bit of duct tape. You don't even have to heat shrink or put conduit on there if you don't want to. I'm just doing it to make it look a lot neater, and just so that my wiring harness stays a little bit more protected from the elements. So we're just going to do the same again to the other end. Now what we're going to do here is we'll put the heat shrink over the end, which we've already chopped, ready to go, like so. Now we're not going to heat shrink that just yet, because you'll notice the harness isn't quite even, because obviously it's not even at the other end of the wiring loom. So all we're going to do is just chop that off, shoots off the table, make it nice and even. We're going to do the same as we did before. We're going to bare back that twin core just enough so that we've got the wires all bared, ready to go. So I just had to quickly race out to the boat because I couldn't remember what side I already had on the boat. Because now we're going to do the Deutz-Spin harness. Deutz-Spin plug on the other end, guys. Get this slippery sucker back up here. Alright, so these little pins, little Deutz-Pin connectors. There you go, over the ends of your wires. So I'll quickly go through and get these all crimped. Now they'll probably be in the automotive section of your local Super Cheap or any other retailer like that. They're just good to use because they actually have like a, I wouldn't say a watertight seal, but they do have a bit of a like dust seal on them. And they work okay. Always put a little bit of electric grease on there just to make sure that I don't get any extra corrosion, or if I do, it's sort of going to semi-protect it. Alright, so one set's going to go 1, 3, 1, 4. Basically, you want to make sure that on the other side of your switch, on the other side of your connector, that both red and red's going to match up, black and black, and you want to make sure that it's the same harness each side. So what we've done on the other side, we go 1 and 4. Same again, 2 and 3. Right, now, what we're going to do is just going to slip that right up, basically, to our plug. We don't have to. You don't have to if you don't want to. It probably would pay, actually, to have it back a little bit from your plug. I'm just going to do the same again on this end. We're just going to heat it up. Make it look all nice and neat. Alright, that end's all done. Nice and neat, ready to go. All I'm going to do is put a couple of bits of tape at various locations just to help hold the insulation in place. There you have it, guys. That's your light pole. All we've done is we've extended it all the way up. So you won't see the top of this, but you'll see it when it's in the boat. But basically you want to leave a little bit of slack there. When it's down, you can zip tie it up to the pole if you really want to. You can tape it up. All right, so we're all good to go. I'll see you guys out in the boat. Let's get out there. And yeah, that's basically the DIY deck light. All right, guys, so we always keep a little bit of dielectric grease in the boat. And this is what I was talking about earlier. So we've plugged the light in. I've just got the little light stump down there. All right, there you go. That's the lights. Yeah, all plugged in, guys. So, always put a little bit of like dielectric grease just in your connection here, just to make sure that you're not going to get too much corrosion build-up or anything like that. But there you go, guys. It's all done.
It's nice.
So, spin it around. Look at that. Alright guys, so that wraps it up. That's our DIY deck light. It's definitely not a cheap option, and it's not the most simple option, I guess you could say, but it is a very good and effective option if you want broad lighting and you want something that's going to last a little while. Like these deck lights, they probably last 2 to 3 years. I said probably a little bit too much then. They last about 2 to 3 years, so that's not too bad. But remember guys, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It really helps me gauge whether you guys actually liked this video and if it actually helped you out. Like, drop a comment down below if you actually want to build one of these deck lights yourself. I'm really keen to know. I'm really keen to find out. And yeah, make sure you subscribe to the channel, guys. And remember, 80/20, that's vision. I'll see you in the next one. Alright guys, see ya.